Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're making a simple tank top. This one has a racer back, pointed hem, and the tiniest straps. Simple yet effective fashion. Speaking of, if you're looking for simple makes to round out your wardrobe, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of modern crochet tutorials and patterns with plenty more dropping weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 105 grams of yarn, and that's 235 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you have ever ridden a go-kart. I have not, but I actually really want to try. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 3 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, and half double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but we can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Next, we're all going to grab our 5mm hook and start off by making a chain that starts 1 inch underneath our underarm down to roughly where our waist is. I need about 7 inches or 18 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 30. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our 1, which is a half double crochet row. So we're all going to start by blocking off that last chain, and we're going to do a chain 2. That chain 2 does not count as a stitch, that is our turning chain, and we're all going to start with an increase of 2 half double crochets. So how that's going to work is yarn over. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the 3rd chain from our hook, we're going to bring our hook down. Into that chain, yarn over, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 3. That is our first half double crochet, and we're going to be doing 1 more half double crochet into that same chain. So again, yarn over. Into that same chain that our previous half double crochet was worked into, we're going to insert, pull through for 3 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 3, and that is our increase of 2 half double crochets. And I do like to insert my stitch marker into this side of my row so that we all know that this is the bottom of our piece. Now from here, we're going to be putting 1 half double crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. So yarn over, into that following chain, insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Again, yarn over, next chain, insert, pull through all 3. Continue with 1 half double crochet into the rest of our chains, leaving the last one. So we've made our way down with our row 1, leaving that last chain. Into that last chain, we are going to close off this row with an increase of 2 half double crochets, just like how we started off this row. So yarn over, into that last chain, insert with 1 half double, and then into that same last chain with a 2nd half double crochet. And now our row 1 is complete, and just to let you guys know, we should have 2 additional stitches from the original chain that we made. Now our following row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So we're going to chain 1. That chain 1 does not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. We're going to flip our work and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So finding that first stitch, we're going to insert our hook into that back loop. Then yarn over and gently pull through both of those loops. Again, into that next stitch, insert into that back loop, pull through everything, next stitch, into that back loop, pull through everything. We're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and we do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row can be too tight to work into. We have made our way down with our row 2, which was our back loop slip stitch row. Now from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows, but now our half double crochets are going to be worked into the back loops. So just to do that together, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now since we are along the bottom, we're always going to start our half double crochet row with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets, kind of like how we started off our row 1, but within the back loops now. So yarn over, finding the last stitch from our previous row, insert in through that back loop, pull through all 3, and then for our increase, another back loop half double crochet into that same first stitch. So yarn over, into that same first stitch's back loop, pull through all 3, and that is our increase. Continue with 1 back loop half double crochet from this point all the way down, leaving the last one so we can close off the row with an increase again. We are back. We are nearly finished with our row 3. We've put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch after we started off the row with our increase of 2, and leaving that last stitch so we can end the row off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles again. So yarn over, into that last stitch's back loop, insert with 1 half double, and then into that same stitch's back loop with a second half double crochet. And that's it. From here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, and a back loop half double crochet row that always starts and ends with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. And we're going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch, because it will have a decent amount of stretch to it, from mid underarm over to the corner of our underarm. Then I will meet you guys back right after a slip stitch row so we can finish up our underarm to get a really smooth curve leading up to the shoulder. Alrighty, so we are back. The first portion of my underarm is complete. I have a total of 4 rows and my width is roughly 1 inch or 2 centimeters, but that is unstretched. Now from here, we're going to continue on with some more underarm rows, but we're going to do some more increases along the top to get a really smooth curve that leads up to the shoulder. So from here, since we should all be along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and start the row off with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last one so we can now do an increase of 3 back loop half doubles together. So just as a really quick tip, if you guys haven't caught on yet, since we do have a pointed hem for this look, we are going to be starting every half double crochet row with an increase of 2. We've made our way all the way down and left our last stitch. Now we're going to do an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets. So yarn over, into that last stitch, insert with 1, same last stitch with 2, same last stitch with 3 half double crochets. That is going to be how we're going to be ending our half double crochet rows for this section. Now we are going to need to increase into our slip stitch row as well. So how we're going to do that is chain 2. That first chain is going to count as a stitch for the following row, and then that second chain is our turning chain, and we're going to flip our work. We're going to insert our hook into that second chain from our hook's back loop, then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Let's do this again. Into that next stitch's back loop, insert, yarn over, and pull through everything, and that's it. We're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now from here, it's going to be a repeat of our 2 previous rows. So it's going to be a back loop half double crochet row that starts with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets and ends with an increase of 3 back loop half double crochets. And then a slip stitch row that starts with an increase the same way that we just started it together, and then 1 back loop slip stitch into the rest of our stitches. And all we're going to do from here is continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can reach the side of the base of our neck. Now it doesn't need to touch the side of the base of our neck, it just needs to be aligned with it, and I'll meet you guys back right after a half double crochet row. Alright, so we are back. The entirety of my underarm portion is complete. I have a total of 15 rows, and this is roughly 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here is work on our neckline. So along the top, we aren't going to be doing any more increases or decreases. So since our following row is a back loop slip stitch row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the bottom of the row. So we are back. Our back loop slip stitch row is all finished up. This is our first neckline row, and we are all going to want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of this slip stitch row. Now from here, we're going to get started on our following half double crochet row, and like I said in one of our previous clips, we're going to be starting every half double crochet row with an increase of 2. So along the bottom, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, start the following row off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up. And that's it. We're just going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows. So back loop slip stitch row, with no increases and no decreases, and then a back loop half double crochet row that only starts with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles. We're going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we have a portion that can stretch over to mid chest, and I'll meet you back right after a half double crochet row. Alright, so we are back and the first half of our neckline is finished. I have a total of 23 rows. My width is roughly 5.5 inches or 14 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to do our middle row. Our middle row is going to be a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So from where we're at, since we all should have ended after a half double crochet row, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the end of the row. Alrighty y'all, so our middle row is complete. Now what we're all going to do from here is basically mirror everything that we did here on the other side. So now along the bottom, instead of increases into every half double crochet row, we're going to be doing decreases. So to get started on our following half double crochet row, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now to do our decrease, we're all going to yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through into that second stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4 loops. That is our decrease of 2. And from here, we're all going to put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Alright, so we've made our way up with our half double crochet row that now started with a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets. Now it's going to be a repeat of our back loop half double crochet row that starts with a decrease, and then a back loop slip stitch row that absolutely has no increases and no decreases. Basically the same thing that we did on this side, but instead of increases, decreases into the half double crochet row. Now just to do our decrease together once more, since we should all be along the top, do our following slip stitch row, so 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and then I'll meet you back after that row, just so we can do our decrease together once more. Our slip stitch row is complete, so let's get started on our following row. Chain 2, flip our work, and start the following row off with a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles, so yarn over, into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4, and continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. Now we're going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as the first side of our neckline that we did, making sure that we're not counting that middle row. And then once we have that, I'll meet you back, which we should all end right after a slip stitch row, so we can finish up with our underarms. Alrighty, so we are back. The entirety of our neckline is complete. I now have a total of roughly 7 inches or 18 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to finish up with the first half of our underarm, and that's going to mirror the second underarm portion that we did. So we should all be along the bottom. So right before we get started on the following row, we're all going to want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that slip stitch row to match this stitch marker over here. Then, since we're all along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Start our following row off with a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches so that we can do our decrease together. So we're at the end of our first underarm row. We should all have 1, 2, 3 stitches left, and now we're all going to do a decrease of 3 back loop half doubles together. So yarn over, insert your hook into that third to last back loop, pull through, into that second to last back loop, pull through, and then into that last stitch's back loop, pull through, and we should all have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. Now from here, we're just going to yarn over, pull through all 5 of those loops, and that is our decrease of 3 back loop half doubles. Now we are going to need to decrease into our slip stitch row as well, so we're all going to chain 1 and flip our work. Now how we're all going to do our slip stitch into our decrease row is insert your hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, then into that next stitch's back loop for a total of 3 loops on our hook. When we have those 3 loops, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and that's it. From here, continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now just to make sure that we have the decreases down, at the end of this row, chain 2, flip our work. Start our following half double crochet row with a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 so we can do our decrease into our half double crochet row once more. So we've made our way up with our back loop half doubles, leaving the last 1, 2, 3 stitches, and now to do our decrease of 3, yarn over, into that third to last stitch's back loop, pull through, second to last stitch's back loop, pull through, that last stitch, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, pull through all 5, and now let's do our decrease into our slip stitch row. So chain 1 and flip. From here, we're going to insert our hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, into that next stitch's back loop. When we have those 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3, and continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and that's it. From here, we're all going to continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of rows as our second underarm portion. Once we have this all finished up, I'll meet you guys back so we can finish up with the rest of our underarm. Alright, so I am back. The first half of my underarm portion is completed. My work is now roughly 9.5 inches or 24 centimeters unstretched, and now we're just going to finish it up with the rest of our underarm. So we all should have ended right after a back loop half double crochet row. What we are all going to do is a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, so chain 1, flip your work, make your way all the way down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of that row, chain 2, flip your work, get started on your following half double crochet row, remembering that that row is going to start with a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets, and then I'll meet you guys back when we have just 2 stitches left so we can do that decrease together. So we've just finished up our back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases, then got started on our following half double crochet row by starting with a decrease of 2 back loop half doubles and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 2. Now we're going to do a decrease of 2 together. So yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, also into that last back loop, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, and that's it. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows for the same amount of rows as the first underarm portion that we did when we got started on this piece. We should all end right after half double crochet row, so once we do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. Alright, so we are back. The entirety of our front panel is complete. My front panel is now roughly 10.5 inches or 27 centimeters unstretched. Now we're going to get started on our back panel, so let's talk you guys through that. Now, because we want this to have a racer back design, what we are going to do is we're going to get started with our back panel by making the same chain that we made for the front panel, and then we're going to be doing the same increases that we did for the first section of our underarm. So I'm going to talk you guys through it. So the first 4 rows for the back panel are going to be done exactly the same way as the first 4 rows as our front panel. Then we're just going to continue on repeating those 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as the entirety of our front panel's underarm. So as an example, every half double crochet row is going to start with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and then ending off the row with another increase of 2 back loop half doubles. Then our back loop slip stitch row is not going to have any increases or decreases, so just 1 slip stitch into every stitch all the way back down. And when we're doing it that way, as you guys can see, we are going to get a different slope, but once we have the same amount of rows as the front panel, we're then going to make a chain that leads all the way up to the shoulder. So I will meet you guys back once we have our last row all finished up. It should be a half double crochet row. We'll finish up that row together, and then we'll do the chain together as well. So I am back. I have the entirety of my underarm portion for my back panel all finished up. I have the same amount of rows as my front panel, which was a total of 15 for my front. So I have a total of 15 here. Now, into that last stitch from our half double crochet row, we should have all ended with an increase of 2 back loop half double crochets, which is perfect. But into this last row only, we're going to be inserting an extra half double crochet into that last stitch just so we get a little bit of a curve that leads straight up to the shoulder. And we're doing that so that once we get the strap going with the shoulder, it doesn't look like a sharp angle that leads from the underarm up to the shoulder. So just yarn over into that same last stitch with 1 extra half double crochet into that last stitch. So now that's an increase of 3 half double crochets. Then from here, we're all going to make a chain that leads all the way up to our shoulder. Now I need roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 15. So now that we have our chain, we're going to do the following row in our row sequence, which is a slip stitch row. Now this is the neckline portion, so just like the front panel, we aren't going to have any increases or decreases along the top. So let's get started on our following slip stitch row. We're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1 and flip our work. So into that chain that we blocked off with a second chain from our hook, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. So insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook with our first slip stitch. Then from here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. Once we reach the body, one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. We're going to continue that till we reach the end of the row. Then our following row is going to be a back loop half double crochet row, remembering that we are going to have the pointed hem for the back panel as well. So start our back loop half double crochet row off with an increase of 2 back loop half doubles, and then 1 back loop half double crochet into the rest of our stitches. From there, we're just going to continue to repeat those 2 previous rows until we have a back panel portion that can reach over to mid back, and then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the rest of our back panel. Alright, so we are back. The first half of our back panel is all finished. Now we're going to do our middle row, which is a back loop slip stitch row with no increases and no decreases. So since we all should have ended along the top right after a half double crochet row, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then I'll meet you guys back at the end of the row so we can get started on the other side of our back panel. Alrighty, so we are back. Our middle row is completed. Now we're going to mirror everything we did here on the other side. So this first portion is going to be pretty much the same way that we did this side, but instead of increases along the bottom, we're going to be doing decreases. So just to do that together, we're all going to chain 2 and flip our work. So just to do our decrease together, we're all going to yarn over, insert your hook into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through for 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, then continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. Then every slip stitch row for this section isn't going to have any increases or decreases, so just 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then from here, we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 rows until we have the same amount of rows as the first half of our neckline, not including that middle row, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can work on the underarm together. Alright, so I am back. The width of my back panel is all finished, and now we're going to finish this up with our underarm portion. So first things first, we're all going to want to insert our stitch marker into the same amount of chains that we made that led all the way up to our shoulder. So I made a chain of 15 over here. So on this side, from the top, I inserted my stitch marker into the 15th stitch. Now from here, since we all should have ended along the bottom, we're going to chain 2, flip our work, start our half double crochet row off with a decrease of 2 back loop half double crochets, and then put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 right before our stitch marker. We are back, and we should all have 1, 2, 3 stitches right before our stitch marker, and what we're going to do from here is yarn over and do a decrease of 3 half double crochets, because this last underarm row on this side we did an increase of 3. So like I said, yarn over, insert your hook into that third to last back loop, pull through into that next, pull through, and then into that next, pull through for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 5. Then from here we're going to do our slip stitch row, and that isn't going to have any increases or decreases. So chain 1, flip your work, and then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then to do the following row, I'll meet you guys back at the end of that row so we can do our decrease of 2 together. So to get started on that following half double crochet row, we're all going to chain 2, flip our work, start that half double crochet row off with a decrease of 2, 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back when we all have 2 stitches left. Alright, so I'm back. My slip stitch row is complete, and we made our way all the way up with our following back loop half double crochet row, making sure that we did start it with our decrease. And now we have 2 stitches left because we're going to end the row off with a decrease as well. So yarn over, insert your hook into that second to last back loop, pull through, into that last back loop, pull through, should have 4 loops on our hook, then yarn over, pull through all 4, and that's it. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows until we have the same amount of underarm rows as our first underarm portion that we did for the back panel. We should all end after a half double crochet row and then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then I'll meet you back to seam everything together. We are back. The entirety of our back panel is complete. Now we're going to seam everything up. So let's start by placing our front panel on top of our back panel, making sure that everything is faced right side out, meaning the ribbing that we have is along the outside. Then we're going to insert our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So start by finding that first stitch into the front panel and insert only into that front loop. First stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything. Again, into that next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop, next stitch into the back panel, only into that back loop, and pull through everything and continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then repeat everything we did here on the other side. So now that everything is all seamed up, we're ready to get started on our strap. So what we're going to do is make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, and we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of the back panel. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook. We are going to pull through, and we're all going to start by making a chain that reaches from our back panel up and over our shoulder to the corner stitch of the front panel. Now, 2 quick notes. This chain that we're about to do, that's going to work all the way around, it's going to form our neck holes, so we want to make sure that it can stretch around our head, but it's also going to form our armhole as well. So we want to make sure that we're giving enough space for that as well. So I have already figured mine out. I need about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Now that we have our chain, we're going to flip our work over to now look at the front panel, and we're going to be inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of the front panel. So it should be where our stitch marker is. I can take this out now, and I'm going to insert my hook into that top corner stitch, which is our side slip stitch row, and insert with a single crochet. Now that single crochet is going to count as our connecting stitch, but also count as our first single crochet when it comes to working across our front panel. What we're going to do from here is put 2 single crochets into every side half double, and 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row. So we already put 1 single crochet into that slip stitch row. So into everyone's following row should be a side half double crochet row. We're going to insert with 2 single crochets. So there's 1, and into that same top loop there is 2. Again, into that following side slip stitch row, find that top loop and insert with just 1. And then into our following side row, which is our side half double crochet row, insert your hook into there with 2. So there's 1, and then into that same top loop with 2. We're going to continue this, making our way all the way across until we reach this side slip stitch row right over here. Once we do, we're all going to make the same chain that we made on this side, single crochet it into the top corner stitch of the back panel, and then single crochet across the same way that we're single crocheting across the front panel. Once we slip stitch into that chain space, double check and make sure that everything is fitting correctly, so this can fit around our head and we have enough space for our armhole as well. Once when everything is looking pretty good, we're going to meet each other back so we can single crochet along the armholes, and then we'll be all finished. Alright, so we are back. Our neckline is complete, and now the last thing we're going to have to do is just single crochet along the edge of our armhole to clean everything up. So let's just make sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the last stitch that we have into our side seam, and then from there, just put 2 single crochets into every side half double, 1 single crochet into every side slip stitch row, and then make your way all the way up and around with our single crochets. Once we reach the chain, just 1 single crochet into every chain. And then once we make our way all the way down, slip stitch into that chain space. Then repeat everything we did here on the other side, and then I will meet you back. So our single crochet along our armholes are complete, and we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch y'all in the next one. Bye!